All right, guys. So we are live. What we're going to do is we're starting just a couple of minutes early. This way, people have a chance to go ahead and log on in. So while we go through this motion in the class today, it is a lot about case studies. Now, anytime you see case studies, understand that there's sometimes the good, the bad, the ugly, the everything that's kind of all around. So the first thing you want to really understand is you want to ask questions. So what I did is I actually purposely prepared this very specific class, pulling from case studies of our current clients. I did have to ask for their permissions and stuff like that. So what's nice is you might actually recognize some of the names in here. If you do, it's because you've probably been to some of our events or you just know some of the clients in general. So as we go through today's class, please keep an open mind and feel free to ask questions. We have a great moderator today. His name's Colin Taylor, and he'll be there to answer any questions as I'm going through these type of aspects. So I know we got a couple of people already logging on today. So we're just going to give you guys a couple of minutes. And once again, keep this an open-ended conversation, right? So, bam, get your coffee, get ready. I love my coffee. It's pretty tasty. All righty, guys. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to be learning today. Right? And we don't want you to get in trouble and quote unquote get burned when doing a deal. Now, what's tough about the real estate market is everyone out there has a different set of skills. Some of us are really good at networking. Some of us are really good at maybe producing contracts or memorizing numbers like the tax code and how to actually structure an investment. Some of us are really good at just being the boots on the ground. So depending on what your skill set is really going to determine how we want to use and leverage our self-directed IRAs for these investments. But understand everything that we're talking about as well also applies outside of an IRA. So I always try to describe this from two different ways. So understand that even though I'm an IRA expert and I like to deal with quests and I like to deal with self-directed IRAs, all these things and all the case studies can be done inside an IRA or outside of an IRA. And you're going to see this in some of the tax advantages of why we should be using an IRA for a lot of these, but you'll also understand why to use when not to use the IRA. So once again, keep this an open conversation. Ask your questions, put them right there in the chat box. We have this streaming on YouTube, Facebook, so please feel free also to share this information on your page just because we like more people to attend. You can also use the chat box below to pitch your deals. All right. While I'm kind of going through these motions, don't be afraid to go ahead and say, hey, I'm a wholesaler, or hey, I'm a lender, or I'm raising capital for this. Use that and you'll see it pop up on the screen so everyone else can go ahead and see it as well. All right. So let's dive right on to today. Like I said, this is a real clients, real case studies. Nothing in here has been fabricated, so we can kind of go through all these motions. And guys, these aren't going to be your home run deals. These aren't going to be the deals you see someone make $1 billion and knock it out of the park. These are going to be what I call your singles and your doubles, maybe a triple here or there, right? These are things that get you to building that wealth, right? So as always, quick disclaimer, guys, you know that we're only here for your educational purposes. Remember, I can't give you any type of real structuring advice or investment advice, right? That's the job of an attorney. So unless you're paying an attorney, no one's ever going to guarantee investments. No one's ever going to go ahead and structure a deal for you, give you that advice that you're looking for, unless you want to pay them properly. So take everything we're talking about here as just education, all right? Now, what we're going to really be learning today is why you should consider doing more investments in real estate using a self-directed IRA. We're going to go through examples of different ways to do transactions, and I purposely pulled maybe more complicated ones or ones that people seem to ask a lot of questions about. Don't forget, too, about our quest fees. We're going to be talking a lot about what fees incur with every type of deal. And we're going to even walk you through how you can avoid fees altogether. I'm saying 100% avoid every single quest fee through these. And then lastly, where can you find your next deal? Now, I can't say this enough, guys. Leverage the chat box. Introduce each other. Use it to pitch your investments and use it to ask me questions. I promise I'll stop and go through those motions on every single one that comes through. All right. So we're going to have to start off, though. We have to have a good base level. And I always like to describe things from an IRS standpoint. Understand that the IRS puts everybody into two categories. One is a taxable category. Therefore, the other one is Non-taxable. That makes sense, right? If we understand this at a very basic level, we're used to operating on the taxable side, right? Taxable side meaning anything you establish, right? If you work a job, a W-2, a 1099, Schedule C, Schedule F, etc., right? You make profit, you make money, you have to pay your taxes. Well, it's not just you though, right? It's also if you create an LLC or a small business, if you create a C Corp, an S Corp, if you set up a land trust, personal property trust, something like that. None of these are tax exempt entities because you created them. You're taxable, so when you set up something, it stays in the taxable side. Now, clearly, each one of these can be taxed at a different level, right? If I'm going to do a real estate deal personally, or I do a real estate deal in my LLC, or do a real estate deal in a C Corp, S Corp, or trust, sure, those taxes might change, but it's still a taxable entity. So what's a non-taxable entity? Because believe it or not, we can use certain entities on a non-taxable side, things like churches, charities, right? Nonprofit organizations. But for us, right, it's going to be a self-directed IRA, a solo 401k, or maybe a QRP plan. Believe it or not, each one of these entities you see on the right side of the screen is truly a non-taxable entity. I can't stress that enough because any deal I do on my LLC is taxable. Any deal I do on my self-directed IRA is non-taxable today, sometimes truly tax-free forever. So when do we do an investment over one or the other? Right? Because at first you think you do everything on the right side, which I would love. I get to charge you more fees. I'll set up more accounts. But there's times we definitely want to use the LLC in general. So overall, we're going to kind of look at the difference of both of these. But remember, I am an IRA expert. So I always relate everything back to the self-directed IRA. Right? So let's go ahead and first figure out why then we should be using that self-directed IRA. Well, the first reason is diversification. When I talk to anyone out there, I understand that you have 403bs, TRSs, 401ks, whatever it might be. All of these plans, you feel most of the time like they're diversified, but they're probably not. They're really only diversified under the public market, right? Oh, I have some Fortune 500 stocks, mutual funds, annuities, but all this is a public asset. It's not actually tangible. I can't touch it, feel it, see it, look at it. So what we always argue is to take a portion of your current retirement funds and move it to the self-directed sector. What this really does allow you to do is have public assets like stocks and mutual funds, but also allows you to have private assets that are tangible, physical assets, real estate, you know? So which one's better than the other? I argue real estate, but really neither. Notice if you want to buy Apple stock, you got to come here. When you want to buy property, you got to go there. Make sense? But the biggest reason we want to use a self-directed IRA is the tax savings. And you're going to see this in these up-and-coming transactions here in just a second. All right. But I want you to imagine right now, just for a minute, you do a fix and flip. And you earn $20,000 on your fix and flip property. Well, you don't really get to keep 20 grand, do you? 20 to 30% of that will go straight to taxation. It could be capital gains tax. It could be income tax, right? Well, if I know that no matter what, every deal I do, I'm going to lose 20 to 30% straight to taxation right off the bat, a lot of times we forget to calculate that into our profit. Most of the time we go to these RIAs and these mastermind groups, and you'll see that the speaker up front is talking about this home run deal he did. He made $100,000 on a wholesale deal. But what they're not telling you is all the taxes they owed on it, and we always forget about it. Well, I can do every one of those deals that we're mentioning inside a retirement account to avoid the taxation. Right? Every single real estate deal you've ever done, you can use your retirement account for. Sorry, I really love coffee. Now, we talk a little bit about social investing and investing in what you know best. And I kind of like to put both of these together, even though I do have them separated out. Social investing means that when I use my IRA, right, I get to actually see what I'm investing in. When I'm doing that fix and flip, when I'm buying that rental, when I'm lending money to someone, when I'm investing into that syndication that's building that apartment complex, I actually get to see the impact it has on my community. I get to actually move in that family, right, to get that house. I get to fix up that house so that way a new family can buy it. I get to invest in that apartment complex where it's being built so other people can live in it. You don't get that same feeling when you're owning a stock. But this also means that since it is tangible, you're kind of investing more in what you guys know, which is why I call it investing in what you know best. Realize that anyone out there, as you're doing these type of investments and you hold stocks, you probably don't understand what made your stock go up in value or what made it go down in value, nor do you have control in those assets. So by using your retirement account and investing in what you know best, it does help alleviate a lot of that. Now, remember, all of these IRAs that we have, whether it's a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, a solo 401k, an HSA, SEP IRA, these are non-taxable entities. So if the IRS is going to give you a non-taxable entity, something that you can avoid all the taxes on, they're going to put some big restrictions on there. People restrictions, transaction restrictions, and investment restrictions. All right. Now, really, out of all of these, for any real estate investor, the biggest thing that you care about are the people restrictions. And really what it comes down to is I have to think of my IRA as its own entity. I have me, then I have my IRA. I'm going to choose to either do something on the taxable side or the non-taxable side. I can't combine these two things, right? It just doesn't work. So if I'm going to go buy a house, right, it's either going to be in my name or my LLC's name, or it will be in my IRA's name. I cannot commingle these two. So this means I can't use my IRA, buy a house, and then go live in it. I can't use my IRA and lend money to myself to fix and flip a house, right? You're not going to foreclose on yourself. I bet if you could lend yourself money, give yourself a pretty good interest rate. And it's not just you, it's also immediate family, spouse, parents, and kids. Now, we teach a whole class just on the restriction side, but just keep that in the back of your mind for now, all right? So we're not going to dive too much into that because this whole class is about the case studies. So now that we kind of laid a little bit of a foundation, we have taxable and non-taxable entities. Let's dive right on in, all right? And we got to understand what investment choices we have when we're using a self-directed IRA. Anything. I always say it's anything you take title to. We've dealt in every single investment you see here on the screen, from single-family homes, foreclosures, tax sales. We've even helped clients go through the joint venture and limited partners and those setting up of the LLCs, to secured notes with unique security, to convertible notes that convert to stock, to even the net profit loans. So we deal in all of them and so much more, guys. So just remember that when we're going to use a self-directed IRA for one of these case studies, we can help you through it. So let's look at the very first case study that I have up here. And this is going to be a syndication with a Roth conversion. Now, what does that mean? What is a syndication? There's all different types of syndications we see out there, right? So the first ones is typically a multifamily, right? This is someone that's raising capital to either fix up a Class C and move to a Class B apartment complex. Maybe they're building a brand new apartment complex, right? Maybe they just got a good deal on it through a foreclosure type auction. But either way, they're raising money for a multifamily deal. It could be for storage units. A lot of times when we see people buying a big chunk of land, a storage unit will be built from the ground up. Very rarely are you seeing someone rehab a storage unit, but this is a type of syndication. Senior living facilities. These are huge right now, right? In the senior living market, probably because of the baby boomers. The baby boomers are right around the corner. And a lot of them are needing those senior living facilities. There's a guy named Chris Russell and Stephen Russell that really deal a lot in this area. They teach a great class on it for free. If you want to learn more about senior living facilities, check them out. All right. Really, anything when you're looking at syndications that have to involve an operating agreement and a subscription agreement, right? This is that big packet you see that's like 90 pages typically. Right? It walks through everything from rates of return to the asset, to the members of the LLC, to your limited partnership agreement. So notice these are all different types of syndications. Now, a client of ours met Robert Martinez, who runs a company called Rockstar Capital. Now, they do a lot of syndications, a lot of multifamily deals actually out in the city of Houston and the Houston suburb areas. So they've been doing this for a long time, and pretty much our client was investing $100,000 into their real estate deal, right, into this new syndication. Now, in order to do so, he did have to be accredited. What does that mean? You have $1 million in assets, pretty much, right? So not necessarily $1 million in cash, but $1 million in assets. Unfortunately, that's not even that much nowadays when you think of just the average home being 400,000 and up. So now, when we do most syndications that we see, the average time frame is 5 years. Now, if we break it down and we just go through the basic numbers, most of the time your rate of return is going to be somewhere right around 20%. Now, you can't definitely get that guaranteed or quoted, but we're just taking all the multifamily deals, whether it's from Rockstar Capital or anyone else that we've seen across the board. Believe it or not, the good ones are usually around a 20% rate of return. However, most of the profit is made on the back end, not the front end. Why is that important to understand? Because if I'm going to use my own LLC, my taxable entity, and I do this investment, notice I'm not living off the profit today, right? Sure, I might get a quarterly dividend or something like that, but it's usually a good faith payment just to make you feel happy. So a lot of times these multifamily deals or any other type of syndication get paid on the back end. Well, this means it makes sense to use your IRA because you're not trying to live off the profit today. So I'd rather use my IRA and avoid all taxes on the earnings. So this is why we like these type of deals. But this client was actually really smart. So what ended up happening is ultimately Rockstar Capital will do 100% of the investment documents for you. This is probably why people like to use them. Right? They'll fill out the operating agreement, subscription agreement, everything else. All you need to do is set up your IRA, give them your IRA account number, and Rockstar Capital will take care of it. Now, I get to charge you some fees. I charge you $125 to fund a deal. They will accept an ACH, so it is completely free to send them the money. And on an annual basis, it's $350 to hold that syndication. All right. So notice $125 to do the deal, $350 a year to maintain it. That fee on $100,000 with a 20% rate of return, right, should not be making or breaking your investment decision. If it does, your deal probably doesn't make sense. But remember at the very beginning of this case study, I said there was a Roth conversion. So let's think of this multifamily syndication, all right? And what does this look like in an average syndication? Most syndications go on what we call a J curve, and this is a mathematical term. So I am a math nerd. So those of you guys who know what a J curve is, you'll understand this pretty quickly. It's really what if you plot x squared, all right? So what does this mean? For the first few years of your investment will always go down in value. Why is that? So year one, notice I'm going to invest $100,000. Well, if I invest $100,000, year two, it's actually only worth probably about 85. Year three, it's really only worth about 70. Why is it going down in value? Well, first off, remember, we got to buy the complex. So we're buying it for, and think of it just like a rehab, $100,000. Now we have to put all the money into it to try to build it back up. Well, during that process, that takes time. It's a non-liquidatable asset. I can't just, request my money back. So all these type of things, since it takes time, is going to make the ultimately the syndication go down in value. This is a good thing because when it goes down in value, by year four, they usually start to develop a base. In year five is when they either sell it or rehab it, or refinance it, and pay back all of their investors. Now, when I'm looking at this J curve chart, I want to do a Roth conversion. I'm going to take that same $100,000. Remember, I invested in year one. So if I do a Roth conversion in year one, $100,000 is added to me as income. That's what I owe. Now, that's okay because moving forward, everything's tax-free. But notice if I did a Roth conversion in year two, that means that same amount now is only worth $85,000. By year three, in this example, is worth about $70,000. So if I want to do a Roth conversion, and this holds true for almost any syndication, this is what you should be looking for. All right. So year three, the client did a Roth conversion, and he decreased the asset of the value of the value of the asset by 30%. This means when he did the Roth conversion, only $70,000 was technically converted versus the $100,000. He literally saved $30,000 in income by doing the right type of conversion. Now, ultimately, was the asset really still worth 100? Absolutely. But it's a great technique to use in any syndication. This works for storage units, multifamily deals, the senior living facilities. It doesn't matter, right? So remember to, after this, all profits moving forward were completely tax-free. So let's take, what are the key takeaways from this specific case study, right? First off, do due diligence. Due diligence is definitely a big step in this type of thing. Now, when we talk about due diligence on a syndication, usually it's not as easy to do due diligence on the deal, but you need to do it on the syndicator, right? Make sure they have a strong track record. Make sure they are using good SEC attorneys. Right? Next, the investment was completely passive and required minimal work on the investor. Notice the client one time did a deal for 5 years that he was able to make money on. Right? Got a lot of tax-free growth on it and had very minimal work on his side. In addition, the syndicator did most of the paperwork for them. That's pretty attractive, right? Know your syndicator and know how to do the conversion. It's very simple. Every year, Quest requires that FMV, that fair market value. Well, when they give us that fair market value, that's when we can do the conversion. It's literally an email from the syndicator. Hey, so-and-so invested X amount of money, and currently it's worth this. Thank you very much. Now I can do the Roth conversion. It is so simple, right? If you do choose to do the Roth conversion, remember, all earnings are 100% tax-free. So I like this kind of case study because it gives us an idea of a syndication. It gives us an idea that J-curve plotted on the X squared aspect. Lastly, it is a great way to understand how to earn tax-free profits in a non-taxable entity. So let's go and look at case study 2, lending money on a second lien position. Now, I know what you're thinking, especially if I got some good lenders out there. I hate second liens. That's where deals are bad. Second lien is terrible, blah, 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 blah. Man, especially if you're out there and you don't have a lot of money to make a deal happen, a second lien position can be one of the best investments out there, and I'm going to prove it. You just need to understand either A, how to structure the deal, B, who your borrower is, and C, truly understand the real estate. So let's go through this. This is actually a good friend of ours. He's actually an employee of ours, did this deal. His name's Mitch Maggio. He's in our real estate department. So you feel free to ask him about it, but his borrower is a guy named Marty. Right? So we're going to kind of go through what this deal looks like. Ultimately, Marty is a local flipper here in Houston. He had to borrow about $150,000, and if I remember correctly, the lender was actually, and I put it up there as Jet Lending, but I believe it was actually Eddie Gant directly. So don't quote me on that, but I want to say it was Jet Lending. Ultimately, they were buying the house for $120,000, and the rehab was roughly $50,000 is what they were originally quoted. Now, the ARV on this house was right around the 275 range. And remember that most hard money lenders will lend you 70 to 80% of the ARV, assuming those numbers make sense. So far, this deal looks really good. All right. Average fix and flip deal, or if you wanted to keep it as a rental, either option works. Not bad. But as he got the loan from Jet Lending and is going through the motions, he ran into a problem. And the problem actually happened in the bathroom. Now, if you ever have to rehab a bathroom, just the bathroom, it's usually going to be about $10,000 or less. So notice that $10,000 in addition is not a terrible thing. Well, what ended up happening is as they kind of got through the bathroom side of things, they found a surprising amount of mold behind the wall. So what he ended up doing is he's like, wow, I actually ran into a problem and I need a little extra money. And he needed 10 additional thousand for the rehab of the property. Now, if we go back to the previous slide, he has almost $80,000 in equity in the house, assuming the rehab went perfect. So by needing an additional $10,000 instead of $80,000, he's really now going to only have about $70,000. Notice this doesn't make the deal bad. Would you still collect a $70,000 on fix and flip? Heck yeah, you would. But he needs $10,000 extra. So Mitch, who knew how to do the due diligence on a second lien, actually had an attorney by the name of Jeff Watson. You've probably heard him speak at some of our classes and stuff. He used a lot of his paperwork. All right. Now, for the steps to have this second lien, properly kind of going through is right here. Ready? First off, Mitch contacted the very first lien holder, being Jet Lending. Why did Mitch do this? Hey, I want to make sure you guys know that your borrower needs more capital. Sorry, guys, I coughed. I muted myself. So notice he ultimately said, hey, look, I know you guys need more money. If you need more money, right, I can give it to you, but I want to make sure the first lien holder knows this. Why is that important? Right? Just for due diligence purposes. Next, okay, he ultimately explained the situation. Hey, look, it's just a little bit of mold. That's why this is what I'm lending. Make sure they know the borrower needs more capital. Because guess what? Sometimes when you go through these motions, the first lien holder will just lend them the additional $10,000 in this case. They don't need to actually apply for a second lien position. So this is nice to know, right? Nope, this doesn't make the deal bad. Just because someone needs to borrow more money to make a deal happen doesn't mean this investment is a bad deal. Now, where I don't like second liens is when someone's asking for what they call the gap funding. A lot of you guys out there want gap funding, meaning what you're trying to do is bring in a second lien holder before you've even started to do any due diligence or the project has even started. You're borrowing all the money for the first lien holder and you're borrowing money to make the deal happen. That's not going to work for me, guys. So notice that's not what happened here. This is not a gap funding deal, right? Due diligence is key. Mitch knew who the borrower was. He knew who the first lien holder was. Right? He knew how to structure it. He knew all this stuff, right? And he did not want to over leverage himself. A lot of you guys out there, when you hear these second lien deals that go wrong, the second lien positions, it's someone who borrowed $50,000, $100,000 on a second lien position. You're crazy. Come on, guys. Think of it as if you were the lender yourself. If you're that guy out there and you're trying to borrow that type of capital on a second lien position, man, that's not going to work. All right. And lastly, he used a good attorney. Now, this was really important because what ended up happening was Mitch was able to get what we call an assignment of rents. If this property got rented out, all right, Mitch would have got the rents if, for whatever reason, the borrower was not paying. That's really nice to know. So not only did he have his second lien position, but he had a personal guarantee from the client and an assignment of rents. This is why using a good attorney is important. But some of you guys go, man, I don't want to pay those attorney fees. Well, let's look at what that looks like. Overall, the loan process was $10,000 is what Mitch lent. He charged 5 points. That seems like a lot of points, but when we do the math on it, the 5 points was only $500. In addition, he told the borrower that he could pay the points on the back end because he knew the borrower needed the money today. Plus, the borrower also had to pay a monthly interest for every month he held the money of 1%. So it's $100. Right? Not bad. Then he made the borrower pay all the quest fees and all of the attorney fees. Why is that important? I'm the bank. If I'm going to give you money, I'm not going to pay to give you my money. You got to cover those fees. Suddenly, I can now use my self-directed IRA and not even pay any quest fees if I structured the deal properly to where the borrower has to cover them. Remember, it's $125 to go through any investment. Well, if I'm going to spend $125, I'm going to pass that off to you as the borrower. And Mitch understood that. Not bad. So overall, what are some of the good takeaways? You don't always need to have a lot of money to do a deal. I think a lot of times you're like, well, I don't have enough money to start a self-directed IRA. Yeah, you do. You just got to be creative. It's important not to over leverage yourself if you're going to do a second lien. I mean, that holds true even in a first lien position. But especially on a second lien position, man, due diligence is key. All right. There are great ways to avoid the quest fees. Hint the borrower. The borrower could cover all of these type of things. Right? And we can't stress it enough on a second lien position. If you're going to do that, make sure you have all the due diligence necessary to make sure you are safe as the lender. I'm almost out of coffee. I need more coffee. So let's look at case study 3. Borrowing money for a rental property. Now, I like this one because this is a real deal that an IRA holder of ours used. Now, I'm going to leave his name out of it, but I'll walk you through some of the non-recourse lenders involved as well. So pretty much the scope of the project was he found a house. It was $130,000 to buy the house. The rehab was a little under $27,000, and I got a picture of some of the HUD and the stuff from the contractor here in just a minute. But the ARV was going to range in between $220,000 to $230,000. The overall idea of this property was not to flip it, but to keep it long term and to kind of have a renter in there at $1,750 a month. So that's not bad. This seems like the average deal. Now let's see what it actually looks like then. The IRA holder was going to put down $100,000, all right, and he wanted to finance the rest. Why is that important? Because he had to borrow $50,000 from a non-recourse lender to make the deal happen. Right? Now he kept enough money in his IRA to make sure he can make payments to the lender if he needs be. Now, Blank Lending, who's a big lender out here in Houston. If you're not in Houston, sorry. I think they only lend in Texas. But they were the ones that were able to provide the non-recourse loan. Now, if you don't understand what that means, it's because you've never dealt with it. But pretty much what it means is your credit is not involved in when taking the loan. The only thing the lender can go after is the asset itself if they have to do a foreclosure. Therefore, they require a larger down payment, hence the $100,000 down payment. Now, what's nice about this is the IRA holder also already understood what is labeled as UDFI, or unrelated debt finance income tax implications. Some of you out there call this UBIT, right, or unrelated business income tax. It's really just a small subdivision, but we're going to actually walk through what that looks like. So understand the IRA put down money, and the IRA was able to borrow money from a lender. A lot of people don't realize that. So let's look what that looks like. Ultimately, we need to understand, first off, what is UDFI? UDFI is a tax that occurs to any non-taxable entity, in this case, the IRA. What it really is saying is, hey, look, the IRS gave you an entity that you can avoid all taxes on your earnings. But if you're going to borrow money from over here, well, we're going to have to tax you something because that's an unfair advantage, right? So it only occurs when the IRA actually has to borrow money to complete a deal. So how much of it? All profits are taxed according to the percentage of debt leverage. As an example, on a $100,000 investment, if that's ultimately what I was going to buy, right, is a $100,000 property, and I put $70,000 down and borrowed $30,000 from the bank, well, I'm 30% debt leverage. This means 30% of my profit will be taxed. That's the key focus right here. So not all of your profit is taxable, only a small percentage. All right. So initial profits and taxation. Let's see what it really looks like. Initially, when you buy the house, there's no taxes, right? Rehabbing and moving in tenants and stuff. There is zero taxes at this point in time in the IRA, even though you borrowed money from a lender. Why is that? Ultimately, you haven't made any profit. People sometimes forget about that. Unless you're making profit, you have zero taxation. So you only pay taxes at the end of the year if there is profit made. Now, what's nice is the house actually appraised for $233,000. So remember, he borrowed $50,000 from the bank. So what percentage of that is debt leverage? $50,000 divided by 233 comes out to 21%. So he's 21% debt leveraged of all the profit. So only 21% of all profit is taxable. Are we following along? I hope so. It's a lot of math. All right. Now, if we're renting it out for $1,750, that's $21,000 in gross. We're going to subtract $1,000 a month for the mortgage payment, all right, plus miscellaneous expenses like $2,500. Remember, only a certain portion of your profit is taxable. This means I have to subtract any expenses from this area as well. So at $21,000 minus my $12,000, which is the net profit, right? Minus, you can also subtract your miscellaneous expenses. You're going to end up roughly $1,800 that is taxable. That's it. That's not what you owe. That's what is taxable. People get so scared of UDFI, and it's like, man, you're going to owe $100 in taxes at the end of the year. Does it really matter? Like, that's not terrible, especially for you to buy a house and be able to leverage your IRA and debt leverage properly. So let's look at some of the big key takeaways in this area. The first one, debt is not bad. Notice, instead of us buying one house, we might be able to buy multiple houses if we debt leverage it properly. Right? This is why we like to see people leverage debt. I understand that Dave Ramsey says, oh, debt is bad. Man, debt is a great way to build a massive real estate portfolio. It really, really is, especially once we understand that we can leverage the IRA. All right? Don't be scared of UDFI. Just be aware of it. Quest teaches classes in these areas nonstop. We do it about once a quarter. We bring in some specialized either tax attorneys or CPAs like Adam Barr, John Heyer, Jeff Watson, right? Michael Plax. They all understand these areas, and you can see all of these classes on our website, or if they're on our website, they're on our YouTube channel. Right? If you like these type of classes too, let us know. You get to take deductions with the UDFI that you normally wouldn't. Normally, when we do a deal with an IRA, I don't get to claim depreciation. You know why I don't get to claim depreciation? Because none of my profit is taxable. However, once you insert that UDFI tax, my IRA now gets to claim any of those off-scene expenses. So it's a great thing to leverage and utilize, right? Use leverage to your advantage and find a good lender. One of the things that made this deal work for this borrower who used his IRA was he had a good lender in place, right? Blink Lending, who is run by a guy named Paul Limnatos. Feel free to look him up. But pretty much what ended up happening was he was able to vet the deal because he understood the area. He understood how to use the IRA, and he also understood what a non-recourse loan was. Some of you out there have some really shady lenders because you're out there and you're trying to shop around and you spend more time, you get to the end of closing and you realize, oh, I have all these extra fees you didn't expect. Well, when that happens, guys, you're wasting time. Make a good connection with a good lender. Build a relationship. And make sure they understand if you're going to be borrowing, having your IRA borrow money, so that they understand what a non-recourse loan is. So overall, guys, this was just a case study class. Case studies can be very boring, but I think they can also be very informational, right? Those would go from everything from learning how to calculate UDFI to understanding what a J curve is, right? To ultimately just why second lien positions can be good. And there is so many other case studies out there. So why is it that we want to use the IRA for each one of these investments? First off, avoiding taxes on every single deal. Notice in each one of these, they weren't what I would consider to be the home run deal. It wouldn't be the one that I'm going to make $1 billion on. All right, these are all very realistic, very upfront investments that people make. And if I know I can use my self-directed IRA to avoid all the taxes, then why aren't we doing it? Most of the time, you're just scared to get started. Maybe you haven't found the deal. So where do you find your next deal? We'll talk about that. What about less tax reporting on your end? Notice I get to charge you a fee. Don't forget about those fees. Right? We get to take care of all the 1099s, 5498s, any of those type of things that would involve your IRA doing any one of these investments. This means it's cheaper on your CPA. If you don't have to do any tax reporting for your investment, suddenly you realize how much more of an advantage and how much more time you have to yourself. The compounding interest. The very beginning, I said if you did a fix and flip and you earned $20,000 right on this fix and flip, but you lose, let's call it $5,000 to taxation, this means I only have $15,000 to reinvest. But in the IRA, I get to use compounding interest. Instead of reinvesting 15, I get to reinvest 20. We all know the more money we have, the easier it is to reinvest, the easier it is to compound, the easier it is to earn more profits, earn more capital, find my next deal. So leveraging compounding interest in the self-directed IRA is one of the biggest aspects I think that people just miss out on. All right. Where's your current capital sitting? This is a big one. Many times we are only focused on our checking account. Well, I don't have enough money in my checking account to make the deal happen. Well, did you look inside your 401k? Did you look inside your TRS, your 403b, your IRA, your pension plan? Most Americans have more capital sitting in their retirement accounts than they do in their own personal checking. If that's you out there, let's leverage that capital. Let's make it work for yourself. All right? What is your current retirement account doing? I love going to events and people go, "Oh, what do you do?" And I give them my little elevator pitch. And they go, "Oh, that's interesting." I'm like, "Well, what's your 401k invested in?" And I get the penguin, I have no idea what it's invested in. Happens all the time. But you're taking a real estate class. Right? You're literally here sitting with me, listening to some skinny guy with big ears and a crooked nose talk to you about why real estate makes sense in an IRA, but you probably have your 401k holding public stocks. Why? Is it just because you didn't know you could use this? You didn't know you could do this type of deal? We'll leverage it. Let us help you out and use those retirement accounts for real estate moving forward. Take advantage of the free knowledge and the free classes around you. A lot of us out there, I don't mind a lot of the masterminds. There's some really good ones out there. There really is. And it's good to have a good teacher, good mentor. The problem with some of those, though, man, they're going to charge you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in some cases for you to work with them. Guys, you can get a lot of that education for free. I got to partner. What's really unique is I work with the Wealth Club. I actually have a membership there, which is a small RIA here in Houston. Now, what's nice is they don't have a coaching program. What they do is they bring in real estate investors that you can all network, pitch deals from one another, and find solutions to your problem. That's what you need, right? And it's like $20 a month. That's pretty good. So check out the Wealth Club because that's mainly what they focus on. I don't need to spend $50,000 for this mastermind. Now, some of you out there want that, and what you're really doing is buying the network. That's different because sometimes it's worth it to spend that type of money to get a bigger network, especially when you move to a brand new area. All right. So where do we find these deals? Where do we take advantage of these classes and the knowledge? Guess where, guys? All right, at the Quest Expo. So if you want to come to the expo, we're going to talk a little bit about that here in just a minute, but we kind of got to go through the steps of using your IRA. Remember, I have to set you up an account. Right now, I charge you $100 for unlimited accounts. So if you want to set up an IRA, it's $100, right? It really is. It's quick, it's easy, and it's an entity that is truly tax exempt. Anyone out there who's ever had to pay an attorney to set up an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp will tell you that $100 to set up a truly tax exempt entity is fairly cheap, right? I got to fund your account using your old IRA or rolling over that 401k. Next, you got to locate your investment, complete some investment forms, and lastly, we'll fund the deal using your IRA. Out of these 5 steps, locating your investment is typically the hardest one. So where do we locate those guys? Right, is right at the Quest Expo. We are hosting our 3rd annual Quest Expo event. We've had to delay it the last 2 years strictly because of all the COVID stuff. I think we're all sick and tired of hearing about it, but it is what it is. Now, the Quest Expo, right now what it is, it's $150 for a ticket. But if you purchase one, call in. We'll give you a coupon code right now. I'll give you the link and his coupon code to go ahead and get a ticket at $30 off. That's not bad, right? So you get a discount on the tickets. All that being said, what we're doing here at this event is we're bringing in speakers from across the U.S. that are not selling programs. What they're doing is they're coming in to educate you on a different topic in real estate, from rentals, fix and flips, notes, subject tos, tax deeds, tax liens, cryptocurrency right now, because a lot of people have been asking for it, right? And we're even bringing in some special guest speakers. One of them I'm actually really excited because I'm a big football fan, is Emmitt Smith. Now, if you guys don't know who Emmitt Smith is, he is an NFL Hall of Famer. But unfortunately, what happens in the NFL or any type of, I'm going to say industry from basketball to baseball, is a lot of people make a whole bunch of money. Then when they leave that career, they don't know what to do with it. Emmitt Smith was unique. He actually has become one of the best real estate investors in the U.S., and he loves to talk about it. So what was funny is we actually were able to bring him in because he wanted to speak at our expo because he understood the value he could bring to the table. So if you're a big Dallas Cowboys fan, which I'm not, I'm a Bears fan. However, it was nice to go ahead and get in one of the biggest Hall of Famers of all time, Emmitt Smith, to come in. You guys will have a chance to come in, meet, greet, talk with him, eat with him, have some drinks, and just hear him talk about real estate and his passion for it and where to get started. All right, guys, so we're bringing all that in at the expo. So ultimately, if you do have any questions, please reach out to your IRA specialist. You can reach out to me directly, reach out to Colin. We're all here just to make sure that you're able to get any questions, comments, concerns that you might want answered. So use the coupon code Taylor30 to get $30 off. And then there's a link down there that will allow you to kind of go through those motions as well. So overall, guys, I hope you did enjoy the class. Get started today. Set up a self-directed IRA. Let us help you. It's $100, right? It's almost the end of the quarter. So you want to make sure you get those set up as early as you can. All right, guys. So overall, I do hope you enjoyed this class. You can email us at IRAspecialist@questtrustcompany.com. The phone number you see on the screen is non-automated, or just visit our website and leverage our chat box. So overall, guys, I really hope this helped. Thanks for sitting with me. I do enjoy my coffee. I enjoy my beer. So if anyone wants to get me a gift, make it coffee or beer. Right? But thank you again, guys. And I hope to see you around. Bye, everybody.